Okay, so today's score is going to be Prokofiev Symphony No.5. Let me see if I have the whole thing. Yeah, it does look like I have the whole score. So this is Opus 100. I think I got this score in my undergrad, possibly, because I did take a couple, I took one music history course that was specifically on symphonies, and this is probably one of the ones I had to listen to. So, four movements: Andante, Allegro marcato, Adagio, and Allegro giacoso. This is his Opus 100, and it was composed in 1944. The instrumentation is 3-3-4-3, 4-3-3-1, timpani, 7 percussion instruments, I don't know how many players, harp, piano, and strings. So one of the flutes is on piccolo, one of the oboes is on English horn. We got a clarinet in E flat, a bass clarinet, and a contrabassoon. And the trumpets are in B flat. The percussion required is tambourine, military drum, cymbals, bass drum, tam-tam, triangle, and woodblock, I think. I remember this piece having a really prominent tuba part and just a very interesting full sound. Yeah, this is our first Prokofiev episode, so I may as well talk about him a little bit. Russian composer, obviously most famous for writing Peter and the Wolf. He died in 1953, so this is one of his later works. Within the last 10 years of his life. He was born in 1891. He would have composed this in the Soviet Union, but a lot of his life was pre-Soviet Union, so I think he sort of escaped some of the censorship of the USSR just by virtue of when he was born. His Romeo and Juliet ballet and the Lieutenant Kie suite are also really famous. He has 7 symphonies, though, so he wrote 2 more after this one. After the revolution in 1917, he left Russia and toured the US, Germany, and then Paris. So in addition to being a composer, he was a conductor of his own works and others, and he was also a touring pianist. And in 1936, he moved back to the Soviet Union, and his greatest successes were all written in this period when he was living in the Soviet Union. He died at the age of 61 of a hypertensive crisis, the same day that Joseph Stalin died. I guess, so some things on his reputation, I think, might be an interesting way to round off this sort of summary of his life. So Arthur Honegger said that he would remain for us the greatest figure of contemporary music, and he was also praised by scholar Richard Taruskin, praised as a 20th century composer for his distinctive diatonic melodies. But obviously as a Soviet composer of semi-tonal and tonal music and post-tonal music, his reputation was questionable. The Cold War was going on shortly after his death and in the later years of his life. And certainly modernist composers had moved on to other things, and by the time he died in 1961, there were a lot of different burgeoning experimental things going on in contemporary music in the West. But I had one teacher who really liked Prokofiev and would I remember when I was really young, that teacher talking about how he was a really gifted melodist, and his talking about his like turns of harmony and how they're really tied to his melodic writing. So he's one of those composers that had this facility for thinking of those different elements of tonal composition at the same time, and marrying them together really well. Yeah, and if you look at his output, we're here at Opus 100, and in total he has 131 opuses. The last piece he wrote was the Seventh Symphony, interestingly. I think having had to listen to this for school in my more formative years, I'm going to find this very familiar, and I'll try not to let my nostalgia cloud my thoughts on this. And yeah, I'm excited to share the piece with you. Okay, yeah, so now that I've reminded myself of this piece, I think I actually first heard it in a composition class, like intro to composition kind of class. It was on my listening list, and I think I only had to listen to the first two movements, so I'm a lot more familiar with those two. And yeah, I think those two are the best. Like, it's such an iconic first movement. It's a really good like slow first movement in sonata form kind of thing. And the second movement is probably the most iconic of the symphony, for the clarinet excerpts. And yeah, the orchestration throughout is really interesting. I think you could learn a lot from studying the score, especially if you wanted to write like more kind of whimsical film score-y things. I think a lot of film composers or film orchestrators have ripped this off, and Prokofiev's style more generally. But this one's interesting because has really good use of like piano in different orchestral contexts. You could like write a whole essay on that. And it also has a really interesting use of the tuba, like constantly doubling the low strings. And that's like a role that normally you would expect a bassoon or contrabassoon to do, but he chooses the tuba. It's a little bit more colorful, and it adds a lot to the character of the piece, which is in B flat and sort of just very rich. Like the harmonies are very like the orchestration of these colorful harmonies it's very like spread out over the entire ensemble. The extreme low, extreme high register, and it's kind of quirky. I think the third movement is my least favorite. The slow movement does not. It might have been this performance by Gergiev, but I really didn't feel like that movement was going anywhere in particular. It was kind of just one melody after another with a different sort of strange accompanimental figure. And I felt like if that was omitted from the piece entirely, it would not take away from the experience. Yeah, so I think this is a must listen if you want to get into Prokofiev. It's a good like beginner's Prokofiev piece. Probably sounds fantastic in a live setting. Like it's probably really fun to play and listen to live. And I would say historically it's very odd because it's written at like the peak of the Second World War, in Russia, like in the Soviet Union, the country which suffered the most casualties during the Second World War. And it's a very weird thing to write in that time. I don't entirely understand it, to be honest. I guess I don't really know what kind of a man Prokofiev was, but certainly I wouldn't be composing anything if I were in that situation. But I guess you got to make a living. Next, we're going to listen to some Webern, his orchestra piece Opus 30, which was also written in the 1940s. And I think it's a pretty dense one, a very pointillistic one, and I think I wrote one analytical essay on it for a class. And it was really fun to study, but that'll be the next one. So until then, happy listening.